Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. If you're here, hit the like button. All right. If you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any questions about anything that we cover in today's lesson, please put your questions or your comments in the comment section down below. All right. And when we're done, share this video with at least 2 people. That's all I ask. Share with at least 2 people. All right. So what are we working with? We're factoring a quadratic trinomial. Now, why is it? First of all, what makes it a quadratic trinomial? Well, what makes it quadratic is the fact that the biggest exponent you see is a 2. I see a 2 right here. I see an invisible 1. Well, I don't see it because it's invisible. But whenever a variable doesn't have an exponent written, the exponent is a 1. All right. So the biggest exponent that we see that a variable has is a 2. All right. We're not worried about the exponents that the numbers have, the coefficient or the constant, right? We're not worried about the 3, the 8, and the 4 in terms of telling whether this is quadratic or not. Now, why is it a trinomial? Prefix tri means 3. Like a tricycle has 3 wheels. All right. So this has 3 terms, 1, 2, 3. How do I know that? Because terms are in algebra are separated by plus signs or minus signs. Plus signs or minus signs. This minus sign separates these 2 terms. This plus sign separates these 2 terms. So I got 1, 2, 3. 3 terms, trinomial. Now, first thing you want to do is look for a greatest common factor. Out of these 3 terms, the greatest common factor is positive 1. But that don't help us. So what? Who cares? If your greatest common factor is 1, we don't really care in most cases. And this is one of them cases where we don't care. All right. Now we say, okay, well, if it's a quadratic trinomial, we check to see what the lead coefficient is. What's my lead coefficient? We got 2 coefficients in this problem. 3 is a coefficient and -8 is a coefficient. But which one is in the lead? Which one do you see first? If you had to read this problem out loud, which one would you say first? You wouldn't say -8 first. So -8 ain't the lead coefficient. You would say 3 first. So 3 is the lead coefficient because it's attached to the variable with the biggest exponent. The lead coefficient is attached to the variable with the biggest exponent. Again, write this down. The lead coefficient is the coefficient that's attached to the variable with the biggest exponent. All right, so 3. 3 is my lead coefficient. Now, why does that matter? That matters because that determines what type of method we're going to use to factor this, right? If it wasn't a 3, if it was a 1, then it would be straightforward, easy peasy, right? We probably knock this problem off in like two minutes. But because the lead coefficient is not a 1, it's going to take a little bit more work, which is cool. It's going to take a little bit more work though. All right, but it's doable, right? It's tedious, not difficult. It's tedious, but not difficult. So because my lead coefficient is a 3, we can use what I call the Malcolm X method. All right. See, I got my Malcolm X hoodie on. Shout out to the ancestor. Make sure you're familiar with his book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Make sure you're familiar with his speeches. Just like you came to YouTube and found this video, you can find a lot of Malcolm speeches right here on YouTube and in other places as well. A lot of them have been printed. A lot of books have been written about Malcolm X. A lot of quality biographies and biographical information has been printed and created about the brother Malcolm X. We should become familiar with him. He should not just be a name that we've heard, but we don't really know nothing about him. We should actually study and read about the brother. All right. And the community that he was a part of, and his wife, Betty Shabazz, and the community he was a part of, and everything, and his history, and all these other experiences that he had. All right. But anyway, this is how I do the Malcolm X method for factoring quadratic trinomials. I draw X. Why not? Oh, look at that. This marker is done. So let me grab a new marker. It's a good thing we have some resources. It's a good thing we got some resources. Let me grab a new marker. So I grab a new marker, and we're going to draw X. Something about fresh markers. I love fresh markers, fresh expos. They're great. All right, so look, now we're going to put a number here, a number here, a number here, and a number here. That's 4 numbers. That's 4 numbers. Now I'm going to tell you where the numbers are going to come from. The number that goes up here is going to be the result of finding the product of the lead coefficient and the constant at the end. The lead coefficient and the constant at the end. The lead coefficient and the constant at the end. 3 times 4. You need to know your multiplication facts. And you better not grab a calculator to do 3 times 4. That's nasty work, right? You should be ashamed of yourself. Nah, don't be ashamed of yourself, but step your game up. Step your game up. Memorize your multiplication facts, right? And if you knew that 3 times 4 was 12 and you just didn't have enough confidence, so you grabbed the calculator anyway, that means you need to do more math problems and get more right answers so you will have more confidence in yourself. So you'll just believe, oh yeah, 3 times 4 is 12 because you knew it was 12. All right. So now 3 times 4 is 12, so you write that 12 up here. Now, what goes down here? What goes down here is the coefficient of the middle term. The coefficient of the middle term. So this requires no mathematics, no computation. You just look at the problem. Okay, this is a trinomial. 1, 2, 3. Negative 8n is my middle term. What's the coefficient? Negative 8. Boom. Write it down here. Let me rub some of that away. So we got negative 8 down there. All right, now what's next? Now we're looking for the numbers that's going to go here and here. Now this is going to take some work. It's going to take some work. Now, how do we get these numbers? This is like a game now. Now it's like a game, right? Like gamification. Everybody talking about, playing games and, making mad fun and everything. This is the fun part. We're looking for 2 factors of 12. This number up top that also add up to the number down bottom. 2 factors of the number up top that add up to the number down bottom. Now, if you know it off the top of your head, the factors of 12, this should be easy. But if you don't, think about it and just write down the factors of 12. So you might want to do 12 and 1, because 12 times 1 is 12. You might want to write 6 and 2. And we're writing down factor pairs, like a pair of shoes, a pair of numbers, a pair of shoes, a pair of numbers, right? And then we write down 4 and 3. These are the 3 pairs of numbers that will multiply to give you 12. That's why those are the factors of 12. All right. So now the game part of this, the fun part of this is figuring out, all right, well, which pairs of these numbers will add up to this negative 8? All right. So I know 12 plus 1 ain't going to add up to negative 8. That ain't going to happen because 12 plus 1 is 13. So cross that off the list. Then I say, well, 6 plus 2. 6 plus 2 adds up to positive 8. Hold on for a second. Whenever that happens, write this down in your notes. Whenever that happens, whenever you get the correct number with the wrong sign, because we need a negative 8. We want a negative 8 for our sum. But 6 plus 2 gives us positive 8. We have the right number, but we just don't have the correct sign. In order to get the correct sign, all you got to do is go back here, replace the sign. So instead of this being positive, make it negative. Instead of this being positive, make it negative. You got to switch the signs. Now ask yourself, what's negative 6 plus negative 2? You got to know how to do arithmetic with negative numbers at this level too, right? You got to know how to do that. You got to know that negative 6 plus negative 2 is equal to negative 8. So if you don't know that, I got a playlist where I explain all of that right here on this channel. That's why I told you to subscribe, all right? You got to know that before you can do these problems. So negative 6 plus negative 2 is negative 8. So that means that these are my 2 numbers. And we know that 4 plus 3 ain't going to add up to negative 8 or positive 8. So cross that off anyway. Now, so my 2 numbers are negative 6 and negative 2. So what do I do with them? I write one over here to the left. I write one over here to the right. Negative 6 and negative 2. Now, what do I do after that? Now, I'm going to take these 4 numbers and I'm going to use this information to basically rewrite the original expression. Remember, it was a trinomial at first. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to stretch it out into 4 terms. I'm going to go from 3 terms to 4 terms, 3 terms to 4 terms, 3 terms to 4 terms. I stretch it out. That's how I do it. The first term don't change. It's still going to be 3n squared. This second term is going to change. It's going to change into this plus this plus this. Think about it. Ain't negative 6 plus negative 2 equal to negative 8? So that means I could I'm breaking negative 8n up. Again, parents, if you're watching this is why in elementary school, kindergarten, first grade, your children are being introduced to number bonds. Another reason they're being introduced to number bonds. So that when they get to Algebra 1 and they got to do problems like this, that process will already be familiar to them. So if you're a parent and you got a young child, you're a parent watching this video right now because you got an older child or you're just trying to brush up, but then you got a young child in kindergarten, first grade, and you frustrated because you like, why they got to do it like this? Why they can't do it the way we did it 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Because it's going to prepare them for this. Because with a number bond, that's like saying negative 6n, negative 2n, negative 6n, negative 2n. It's all about preparation for the future. So my suggestion to you as a parent, if you're watching this, is to embrace it. Embrace it, right? Because so many students that might have been proficient in mathematics in elementary school, when they get to middle school, when they get introduced to pre-algebra, when they get introduced to algebra in high school, or whenever they get introduced to it, they have a lot of problems. So what the so-called new math or the Common Core math is supposed to do is introduce some of the algebraic concepts at a much earlier age. So therefore, it's a smooth transition as they progress through their mathematical coursework. So embrace it, parents. Embrace it. Number bonds, negative 6n, negative 2n, negative 6n, negative 2n. All right, so now we got minus 6n, minus 2n. And then we bring that plus 4 down. That don't change. First term don't change, last term don't change. First term don't change, last term don't change. We stretch it out by breaking up the middle term into 2 terms. Then we got plus 4. All right, now we're going to do something called factoring by grouping. Factoring by grouping. Now, if you don't know how to do factoring by grouping, you're not familiar with that, I got a whole playlist on factoring by grouping. I got a whole playlist on factoring by grouping that I want you to go to, right? And brush up on your skills with that. Or learn it for the first time. I give thorough explanations. Now, because this third term is negative, I want to rewrite this like this. 3n squared minus 6n plus, I'm going to put this in parentheses, make this look like a binomial. I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to put these 2 terms together as a binomial, right? I just like to have a plus sign in between the 2 binomials when I'm factoring by grouping. Now, when I factor by grouping, I did the grouping now. The grouping part is done. Now I'm just basically factoring by finding a GCF. Finding a GCF. So if you don't know how to find a GCF of algebraic expressions, I got a playlist on that too. Go to that playlist, right? And watch some of those videos and then come back to this if you need to. All right, so now, what's the GCF of 3n squared and negative 6n? 3n. So I write 3n down. Then I put parentheses. Then something's got to go into parentheses. 2 terms are going to go inside. 3n squared divided by 3n is n. Then negative 6n divided by 3n is minus 2. Then we put the plus sign. Do we put the plus sign? Let me think about this. Yeah, I think we'll put the plus sign. Sometimes you put the minus sign, sometimes you put the plus sign. We're going to see, though. All right, we're going to see. Now, the GCF of negative 2n and 4 could be positive 2, could be negative 2. Let's see. Let's see what happens when we use a 2. When we use a positive 2, let's see what happens. Now we divide. Negative 2n divided by 2 is going to be negative n. See? I don't want that. Because my goal is for the binomials to be identical. The binomials to be identical. The binomials to be identical. This is a positive n. This is already a negative n. That ain't cool. I don't want that. So that means what I need to do is go back. Let me erase this. I need to change my GCF. Remember I said, rewind it if you need to, that the GCF for these 2 is either positive 2 or negative 2. Positive 2 or negative 2. Because 2 is a factor of negative 2 and 2 is a factor of 4. Negative 2 is also a factor of negative 2. And negative 2 is a factor of 4, right? The n is not common. So the n ain't going to be part of the GCF, right? But because I want for this binomial to match up with this binomial, and we just saw what happened. You saw what happened, right? Because this is a positive 2, when I divide this by this, that don't give me a positive n. So let's do this. Let's take out the negative. And that's a trick that I forgot. When you're factoring by grouping, when the third term is negative, the trick is you factor out, use the negative GCF. Don't use the positive GCF, right? That's something I discovered after years and years of doing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these problems, right? Maybe not thousands and thousands, but definitely hundreds and hundreds, right? Well, maybe thousands. Yeah. Anyway, when the third term is negative, just factor out the negative GCF so that the binomials can match up, because we want the binomials to match up. Now we do the division. Negative 2n divided by negative 2 is positive n. Positive 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Now, see how those binomials match up? That's what we want. Whenever you factor by grouping, this is the goal. You want the binomials to be the same. You want the binomials to be the same. If they're different, something ain't right. It's not working out the way you want it to, right? The math is not mathing the way you want it to. So you got to either manipulate some things or maybe it's not factorable, all right? Or in that way. Now, back to Malcolm X method. That's why we draw the X. Why else do I call this the Malcolm X method? Because we think about Malcolm toward the end of his life, he started 2 organizations, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, as well as the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. But he was the common factor. N-2 and N-2 are common factors. So we can think of Malcolm as N-2, N-2. We could think of 3N as the OAAU, or the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which you should look up and research. right? And negative 2. And actually OAAU, and the brother, the elder who's still living, Peter Bailey, right? I think his name is A. Peter Bailey, right? Who was a member of the OAAU as well, right? And then we have minus 2, which could represent the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. All right. Peter Bailey actually wrote a book about Malcolm X, at least one. I think one. I need to do my research, but he wrote at least one book about Malcolm X, right? Now, how do we finish this problem? This is not finished yet, because when we finish, we should end up with two binomials written adjacent to each other. All right. So what we do is n minus 2 is the greatest common factor. So I'm going to write n minus 2 one time, put it in parentheses, and then I'm going to have another binomial. Now, I take this expression and I divide it by the GCF n minus 2. When I divide it, the n minus 2's cancel out, leaving me with just 3n. So I take the 3n and I write it inside the parentheses right here. Then I do the same thing with this expression. I take this expression, divide it by the GCF. The n minus 2's cancel out. N minus 2's cancel out, leaving me with minus 2. I put that in the parentheses. So this is how you write your final answer. The quantity n minus 2 times the quantity 3n minus 2. This is the factored form of 3n squared minus 8n plus 4. Now, how does this help us? This whole process that we went through, this whole mathematical process, we're developing our critical thinking ability. That is a life skill that you need in any and every situation. All right? So if anybody's sitting there thinking, why do I need to know this? How's it going to help me in life? That's how it's going to help you in life. You might not see it, but it's in there. It's kind of like an athlete doing exercises and different calisthenics. They may not do those actual calisthenics and exercises in the actual game, but do you think those exercises and calisthenics help them to be a better athlete, a better performer? Right. The same thing with math, the same thing with algebra, geometry, any math subject, right? It helps your brain to think critically, right? Helps your brain to assess situations, to navigate situations better, to understand information and interpret information. A lot of people don't know how to think because they don't participate in activities that require them to think. Math requires you to think. So you're actually using your brain. Your brain is like a muscle. Think of it that way, right? You have to use it in order for it to be strong and maintain itself and become stronger. So that's number one. Number two, if we're in a algebra situation, this could have been an equation. We could have said 3n squared minus 8n plus 4 equals 0, solve for the variable n. So one way to solve for an equation like that is to basically factor it out. And now that we have two linear binomials, we can break them down and set up separate equations and then solve for n, like by doing n minus 2 equals 0 and 3n minus 2 equals 0, and then solve for n. All right. But the first reason I gave you is the most important one, just developing your critical thinking ability. Because with critical thinking, then you can solve problems. And we are human beings that have problems and will have problems, right? The question is, do you know how to solve your problems? Or your problem's just going to be there because you don't know how to solve them? Or you're just going to sit there and hope somebody else is going to come along that does know how to solve problems and going to solve your problem for you? You decide. So this is what math is really for. It's for problem solving, right? Developing problem solving skills. It's about training your brain to know how to solve problems in any situation. Your problem might not look like this in real life, or in everyday life, I should say, right? I'd rather say everyday life because this is real life. But the problem might not look like this, but your brain is being trained in terms of how to solve problems and by using critical thinking ability. All right. So anyway, make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you wasn't already. Make sure that you drop some comments down below. Drop some questions. If you still got questions, that's cool. I welcome all questions, and share this video with at least 2 people. All right. Peace.